All right, so today we're tackling a book that pretty much took over the world. Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You've seen it everywhere, right? Well, it calls itself a counterintuitive guide to living a good life. And trust me, counterintuitive is the key word here. We're going to break down its core philosophy, which, let's just say, it's not what you'd expect. So the book kicks off with this list that I think we can all relate to, maybe a little too much. Be happier, be healthier, be the best, better than the rest. I mean, it goes on and on. It's that constant pressure, that never-ending checklist from culture, from social media, from, well, everywhere, telling us we need to be more. And while it sounds all shiny and aspirational, it's actually setting a huge trap. And here is the first major twist from Manson. He basically says that this obsessive chase for the positive, trying to be happier, healthier, all of it, is actually what's making us miserable. Think about it. It just shines a giant spotlight on everything we aren't. It's a constant reminder of what we lack. He has this fantastic analogy for it. He says, look, a genuinely happy person doesn't need to stand in the mirror every morning and tell themselves, I'm happy, I'm happy. They just are. It's like that old saying from Texas, right? The smallest dog barks the loudest. The more you have to shout about how great things are, the more it just kind of highlights your own insecurities and the feeling that maybe they're not. And this is where he introduces this brilliant concept he calls the feedback loop from hell. And oh man, is this relatable. Okay, so imagine you get angry about something, totally normal, but then you get angry at yourself for getting angry. Why am I so negative? Then you start thinking, wow, getting angry makes me a bad person. And now you feel guilty on top of being angry, and you just spiral. You're trapped in this loop, all because you're trying so hard not to feel a negative emotion. Okay, so if chasing good vibes only is the problem, what's the answer? This is where the book makes a huge pivot. It introduces a core idea that will probably flip everything you've ever been told about happiness completely upside down. It's something called the backwards law. So this idea isn't brand new to Manson. It's from the philosopher Alan Watts. But here's the deal with the backwards law. The more you desperately try to feel better, the less satisfied you actually become. And why is that? Well, because the very act of chasing something, of pursuing it, sends a message to your brain that you don't have it. Chasing happiness just screams, I am not happy right now. And that brings us to the absolute core paradox of this whole philosophy. It's a bit of a brain bender, so stick with me. Wanting a positive experience is actually a negative experience. It's born from a place of lack. But accepting a negative experience, that, weirdly enough, is a positive experience. It's about acceptance, it's about courage. The whole thing is about just letting go of the chase. And listen, this isn't just some new agey self-help talk. This idea has deep roots. Just look at what the philosopher Albert Camus said. You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. Wow. I mean, right there, the search itself is the problem. All right, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually do this? How do you apply this to your real life? Well, this is where Manson gets super practical. The first big solution is all about making a crucial mental shift. It's about choosing your struggle. So, think about how we usually set goals. We ask ourselves, what do I want to enjoy? What do I want out of life? And our brains immediately jump to the highlight reel. The fancy job, the perfect partner, the beachfront house. We dream about the result. But Manson just throws that whole question out. He says that's not the important question. The real question, the one that will actually tell you something meaningful about yourself, is this. What pain are you willing to sustain? Because let's be honest, nothing good in life comes for free. Every single thing you want has a price, a struggle attached to it. So this really drives home the point that happiness isn't some magic destination you arrive at. It's a byproduct of the struggle itself. Take getting in great shape, for example. The goal isn't just to have an amazing physique. True fulfillment comes from embracing the process. The early mornings, the sore muscles, the discipline at the gym. When you learn to actually appreciate that struggle, that's when you find real earned happiness. And to really hammer this point home, Manson tells this great personal story. He talks about how for years, all he wanted was to be a rock star. I mean, he was completely in love with the idea of it. The image of him on stage, shredding a guitar, crowds screaming his name, the glory. But what he realized was he wasn't in love with the process. He hated the tedious practice, the stress of booking gigs, hauling heavy amps up and down stairs. He wanted the reward without the struggle. He wanted the result without the process. And his big takeaway is just so powerful. Life doesn't work that way. What defines you isn't your dreams, it's the struggles you're willing to endure to make them real.
Okay, so choose your struggle. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. But there's one more big idea we need to cover. And this one is all about your mindset, about finding a weird kind of freedom in being wrong.
So if you're going to choose your struggles, you have to know what you're struggling for. You need good values. And Manson gives us a really simple test. Good values are things that are based in reality, are good for the people around you, and, this is key, are things you can actually control, like honesty. Bad values, on the other hand, are the opposite. They're often based on things you can't control, like being popular, or they might even be harmful to others. And this leads to a whole new way of looking at personal growth. So often we think it's about going from being wrong to being right. Manson says, no way. Growth is just a long, continuous process of going from being wrong to being slightly less wrong, and then a little less wrong after that. It takes all the pressure off. The goal isn't to find the one perfect, certain answer. The goal is just to keep getting a little bit better. So how do you actually practice being less wrong? You have to get comfortable with uncertainty. And he gives us 3 killer questions to ask ourselves to keep our own egos in check. First, what if I'm wrong about this? Second, what would it mean if I were wrong? And third, would being wrong actually create a better or a worse problem for me and for other people? These are the questions that keep you humble and keep you growing.
And this brings us to one last brilliant paradox. We live in a world that tells us freedom means having endless choices, right? The more options, the better. But Manson flips that on its head. He says real freedom, real liberation actually comes from commitment, from rejecting all the other shiny distractions and going deep on one thing, one relationship, one career, one value. That's what frees you from the crippling anxiety of what if.
So in the end, the book brings it all back to one final, unavoidable truth, our own mortality. And he says, thinking about death isn't supposed to be depressing. It's supposed to be the ultimate filter. It's the one thing that helps you figure out what truly matters. It forces you to ask the biggest question there is. What is your legacy going to be? When all is said and done, what will you have left behind? And according to Manson, that is the only thing that's truly worth giving a fuck about.